So FUD is being pushed into the media, trying to get Binance to collapse, and has been hitting the markets hard. Bitcoin has been dumping also this past week, and altcoins have been dumping even more. It's a great day to have Paul from Definity joining us so that we can take a look at the patterns in the price action. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. And if you like money in crypto and you're looking for a seasoned investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. Do note I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul invests in many different markets. We do want to thank our Patreon members. We have a private Discord that our Patreon members get access to. They also have access to this video a day before everyone else. We pre-release it on Wednesday. We film it on Wednesday, pre-release it to our Discord members who are also Patreon members. We do, though, have a free Telegram group that you can join below with a fantastic community. Our admins frequently do purge bots, and we kick people that are toxic. So it makes for a first-rate community of intelligent people to join and get ideas from or bounce your ideas off of, because there are a whole lot of deals on sale right now in the crypto market. It's good to have like-minded people so that just the network effects of sharing thoughts with other intelligent people. Now make it rain on that like button and strap in for the show, and let's welcome Paul to the stream.
Great to be here. Nearly the end of the year. I think we'll be quite pleased to see the back of this one and starting the new one with optimism. But there are some good reasons to be still optimistic on crypto. So I know it doesn't feel like it, but there are some good signs out there.
Well, we can't say 2022 didn't give us anything, because it gave us some fantastic deals. What it didn't give us is massive appreciation. What it didn't give us is with loads of bad news, except for heavy discounts on many of the projects actually going below what many of us expected we would ever see from them. So in that sense, it gave us a gift, or multiple gifts if you count all the different projects being on sale as multiple gifts, but that's the only gift it's given us.
I think it's an important part of the cycle or the development of any new technology, that things get just overheated, overexcited. You get lots of different new projects that some are better founded than others. And it's just a question of, will this derail the whole of the financial markets and cause a big crash in everything? Or is it just something that is very similar to the property market or the tech bubble bursting in the early 2000s and everything else continuing higher, which ended up being a phase in what was a very profitable market in terms of the long-term outlook for tech. So I think it's the latter. I think this is part of the maturing process of new technology. When people don't know what they're looking at, they get very excited. When there's lots of money around, they'll pump it into projects without really doing due diligence or research. And then the bubble deflates, and then it deflates to a point where real value appears. And then it extends even lower than that real value, because, of course, people get so depressed about the outlook that they just don't want to touch it. And then you get this consolidation period and a new trend to the upside that has less people on board, sadly, because whether you bought it at the wrong time or over leveraged or whatever it might be. But there will be some great projects out there, and I still fully expect there to be a big rally in crypto. Obviously 2023, when in 2023 is the big question. Will it be early or will it be late? We're seeing currently a Santa rally in the equity markets, or maybe it's the start of that, because most people are saying, oh, that's it, the markets are all going to be really quiet. And then suddenly the Dow's up 500 points and everything's bounced from a really interesting point that I'll show you in just a moment on the charts. So I think technically the broader macro theme is sort of pulling away from crypto. So that rubber band is being stretched and stretched. My big question, just to sort of give you the overview of macro in terms of crypto I think either we'll just consolidate, or maybe they'll try and shake us out for one more low. But then that will be the buying opportunity. Shut your eyes and buy, because the levels will be really good. And then we'll go into what should be a sustained rally. Because I think there'll be a big rally in everything else, or this rally that we're seeing in equities and in risk, it doesn't feel like it's going away. So it's just a question of how long will it be before all the bad news in crypto is out, and then people go, okay, that's it. We've seen the worst. It can't get any worse than this. Therefore, market's going to go up. So, I had a quick look at the viewers' picks. Loads of viewers' picks this week. Wow, thank you. It's great. It'd be great to look at them. But I think I'll just say, for a start, we've got to place everything within this macro theme of crypto is still obviously under a bit of a cloud, and we're still trying to find and feel for these lows. And I'd much prefer there to be more of an indication that we're in this new trend, which will then make some of the more riskier plays a bit more appealing. Because at the moment, and for some time, we've played it a bit more cautiously, because that's been the nature of the market. But I'll go over to the charts and we can have a look at what's going on. So if we start off with the Dow Jones Industrial Average, if you have a look at what's going on here, this has had a fantastic rally from the September lows, which was when everybody was talking about a crash. The market's gone up very aggressively. Now, we're not at new highs, not new all-time highs, which are up here, but we're heading towards them. And I think after a consolidation for next year, we could be going for that. So that would be my call for next year, that we attempt to break into new highs. We're seeing the moving averages come together. See, that's the long term, and this is the medium term moving average, and they're approaching a crossover. That would be a bullish crossover. So all that means is that the price action has been performing really well of late, and the bearish trend from the beginning of January 2022 is potentially coming to an end. Now, it is a fragmented market. The Nasdaq seriously underperforming. Tech is seriously underperforming. But there are some pockets of strength that are encouraging in some of the major tech stocks. But for the moment, it's very much unloved. So I think it will play catch up, but I don't expect it to lead the way up for a while, because tech stocks, technology generally, in the broader sense, is probably hitting a maturity point. And I just think, whilst this relationship between, possibly because of what we've seen happening, I think it's moving people towards real assets, like investing in companies that actually produce real things that appear. Now, I'm not saying that means that the digital economy will not be the future, because it definitely will, and there'll be some very exciting projects. I'm just saying that sentiment is such that I think, in the same way that when we had our iPods, like the first phase of MP3 players, for a long time, that was a big wave. Actually, one of the things that I predicted was that we'd go towards vinyl, because being of a certain age, I remember the days when you'd buy a record, play it all the way through, and look at the album cover. And I thought, I'm sure that will come back. And that comes back because people miss having something tactile. In a sentiment sense, that's very similar to what happens in the markets. Like, people love, the technology, but they also might want to move to more staple products that produce income that they can see, and that's where the economy rebalances. So we need more risk capital to come back in, and people to feel a bit more risky, and they will do. We just need interest rates to flatten off, and in that regard, we've had the weak CPI number, which followed. So we talked about that last week, and then it followed the rate hike by the Fed of 50 basis points, which was less than had been expected from a few weeks before. But I think we are getting close to the point where interest rates will flatten off and they won't be raising them anymore. And we'll probably get to that point in the next month's print. So next month's CPI print, I think, will be much weaker. And so the direction of travel for inflation will make it so that they will not have to raise interest rates as fast as they're expecting. And this is partly why we're getting this rally in equities now, because the market is starting to anticipate that next phase. So all this is good news for risk. It's a very simple way of saying that risk will continue to be attractive. The US dollar will continue to weaken. So we can quickly look at a US dollar chart. So as you know, this was the upward trend that we talked about ending around 115. We left the door open to a potential another retest of highs, but we were generally looking for a reversal, whilst everyone else was looking for 120. Now we've seen a very strong retracement, and that's continuing. And this is a very powerful down move that will have a correction. It will have a rebound at some point. But the important point here is that the US interest rates aren't going to go up as quickly as expected. The dollar weakening is great globally for risk. And that means that this is something that we need to look forward to that will effectively trump the FUD that's coming out in crypto in the short term. So at some point, people will just start to look at risk, the potential to invest in, or the fact that they've got more capital to invest in new projects and fresh projects. Because despite what everybody says, everyone's looking for the next new thing, and nobody wants to miss out on another big project. So there will be funds and investment in this area because it's not going away. And the dollar weakening helps that, and it reflects the fact that the market is actually moving away from a position of fear and one towards a position of risk, and that will only continue in 2023. So, we could look at some of the commodities and stuff, but I think we should probably look at some of the cryptos because there's quite a lot this week to get through. But was that okay for an overview?
Yeah, that was a great overview. So what's crazy is we have this perfect parabolic move here with the US dollar and the breakdown from that, right? Which, like you said, it will usually come back up some and retrace some of those losses, but then it's probably going to continue a bigger downtrend after having done a parabolic move in uptrend. And as the dollar goes down, that's good for risk on assets like crypto and stocks. We're already seeing the Dow have some massive gains. We're not seeing much of that roll into tech stocks or crypto yet, but that will come, like you said. Yeah, let's take a look at some of the majors or anything else you want to look at before we dive into some of the altcoin suggestions from audience members.
Yeah, just as an aside, if people are interested in precious metals, gold has been doing very well. It's priced in US dollars, so that's not surprising, but this is starting to move higher, and it's a long-term play for me that I think gold will strengthen, as will silver, which is kind of reflective of the weakening US dollar. But it's also, I think, important to say that although I'm expecting interest rates to kind of flatten out, I don't think inflation will go away. I think it's a policy that they will keep inflation bubbling in the background. So, and again, this is why investing in sort of riskier assets rather than leaving your money in a bank account that will end up losing its purchasing power year on year is why, why that's a broader strategy, is why people are investing in precious metals. But in actual fact, although precious metals may go up, you may be better off buying equities because at least with equities, you get a return or you can get a dividend or you can get something from them. But it's as they say, when the tide rises, it lifts all boats. So, at some point it will lift everything. But it's just interesting for people who've been looking for a rally in the gold and silver market, because they also place cryptos in that safe haven, inverted commas, space. So gold, silver, crypto, it's like for people who who want to get out of fiat, those are the avenues. So gold and silver going up, I don't see it as a negative fit for crypto. Some people do. They say, oh, well, it's taking money that might go into Bitcoin. I don't see it like that. I think people will physically, if they're physically holding gold, that's much harder than buying Bitcoin and then, sending it to other people as a big store of value. Or if you're in a war-torn country, you're much more likely to want to hold Bitcoin than you are to want to hold a physical asset that could be taken off you. So I think it's interesting that that's moving up, and it kind of reflects a long-term view of inflation just bubbling hot, and reminds us why Bitcoin was created in the first place. It was because of this current policy, which is to allow fiat to effectively devalue over time, and to have an anchor against that, which is Bitcoin that effectively reduces over time in terms of the what the miners receive, the halving, as everybody on this channel will know. So you can't produce more of it. There is a limited amount. So at some point, those macroeconomic themes have got to come to fore. But people are picking up gold and silver now, and it'll just be interesting to see when they start to look beyond the FUD and move into, crypto assets for the reasons that they were created in the first place.
I had a question about futures ETFs versus spot ETFs. And I watched this video on the gold, and when gold was becoming a real threat to the US dollar, right? Especially after the US dollar depegged from gold. And that in order to hold the gold price down and prop up the dollar, they only allowed futures ETFs for gold and not spot ETFs, because they didn't want people to have to hold gold. And that way a whole slew of shorts can manipulate the price lower. Have you ever heard something like that?
Yeah. I've look, there's more contracts out there than there's deliverable gold is kind of the summary from what I understand it. So that means that you can take positions that are bigger than the actual delivery of the market if you want to. But some people say that central banks are manipulating the price of gold lower. I don't know whether that's right or not. It's possible. I've not really superficially, looked. I've looked at it from a superficial perspective, and the reason why is because the way I look at it, if gold's going up, and I think it's at a good upward trend, whether it's being manipulated or not, or whether it should be going up or not, to me is kind of irrelevant. If it's rising in price and it's something I'm interested in, or if it's trending down, it's something that I'm interested in. And I personally can't do anything about that manipulation. But I have heard that. I've heard that many times. And yeah, it could be true. So I wouldn't discount it. I wouldn't say it's wrong. Stranger things have happened, but I also wouldn't be able to say for sure that it's happening as well. So some people say that Bitcoin, for example, I've heard things like Bitcoin was invented to keep the value of gold lower, for example. So instead of people investing in gold, they invest in Bitcoin. It takes money away from the gold market. So
it does take money away from the gold market. They're kind of like cousins, right? But they solve the problem in different ways, gold and Bitcoin. And people say, well, you can't make a watch out of Bitcoin. And that's very true. But you can't make a watch out of silver instead of gold. And so there are other substitutes. Gold is the ultimate, since beginning of time, store of value, and always has been. This whole idea of digital store of value is new, but it's easier to keep safe. It's easier to take with you if you travel across continents. And so each has some differing advantages to it. So kind of complementary to each other, but definitely competing as well.
Yeah, I think the point is that it's what is not fiat. So it's a vote for not fiat. It's like, what do you do if you're saying, okay, look, the official inflation is whatever it is, 7.3%, but Shadow Stats probably thinks it's 15%. So if you're losing 15% of your savings or something every year, then what do you do about it? So even if gold stays stable, that's better than what's going on. You're not going to be rewarded by putting it into a bank account that can't cover that rate of interest, which is probably why the banking stocks are going to do very well in 2023, because you've got this, they're managing to hold interest rates pretty low and yet charge people much higher, which is their model for business.
Yeah, so their margins are going to go way up.
Yeah, exactly. And and as long as there's no other form of crisis, which there shouldn't really be at this stage, it should be a good overall macro theme. As long as they don't yank interest rates too high and they won't, because actually the market dictates where they put interest rates. As soon as there's signs of a slowdown, which is what we're already seeing in the property market, they'll ease off on the interest rate rises. So that's what's going to happen. But yeah, so the point is, yeah, gold and silver are just, and Bitcoin and the other, and ETH as well. And I'd even say, you know, the altcoins for me, that they represent a just high risk, not fiat trade. So it's just, obviously there's far more risk, as we all know, of those things going to zero, and that's why we put less money in it, just in case. But it's but having money in a bank account is not necessarily being rewarded. So that's why I think the stock markets will do pretty well next year, whilst this whole scenario is being effectively not engineered, but there's not really a lot you can do if you're in charge of the Federal Reserve and you've got a whole load of debt that you need to inflate away.
Agreed. If you don't mind, why don't we jump into the Bitcoin chart and then ETH, and then let's dive into some of these altcoin suggestions.
Absolutely. So the big takeaway from what's going on in Bitcoin right now is that despite all the news, all the terrible news that we've had recently, it still hasn't managed to make a new low. So this low here at around 15,440, that sort of area, the market made a low and it's gone sideways. Now, that's not enough to get bullish about the market, because it's not beyond a sort of week on week trade. I thought it might squeeze up a bit. It's done a little bit of a rally and it's come off. So it's in a fairly neutral space, but it's still, again, as I said last week, it's for the bears to take this lower because the news flow is so bad. So for me, the market isn't really responding in a bearish way. It's responding in a neutral way, which is pretty interesting given the flow of the news is extremely bad. And so that I find that interesting. Now, that doesn't mean that the market will immediately go up. It just needs to consolidate. And I really do think as long as it can just hold these current levels or maybe even go sideways into year end, that will be a really good result, and it will build a springboard for which we could talk about a bigger rally. Now, if we get some out of the blue strong rally from here, I'd be very happy about that. But I think realistically, with everything sort of pointing to the downside, got the moving average, the trends, even the shorter term trends are still, each high is a little bit lower. We've got to be extremely cautious. Now, if we do break lower, I'm very interested, as I've said before, about this zone in Bitcoin, which is around 14,700 to 13,888. Now, I hope it doesn't go for that zone, but if we look at this long-term chart, it is possible. Now, that is resistance high from here, which support and resistance reverses its roles. I think if the market does break lower, it will cause a short-term kind of capitulation. But that really would be like maximum bearishness for the sector, and therefore in that zone, for me it would be worth buying with a stop. I mean, obviously the way I look at it is I'd expect it to stop in that zone. If it doesn't stop in that zone, there's a problem, a big problem. But that zone of support is of interest. Now, I'd rather it didn't go in there. But as it stands, as we look at it today, with all the talk and the the sort of fear and rumors and etc., Bitcoin is still higher than it was at the start of the SBF debacle, which is a bit strange. It's a bit strange. So that anomaly I like, because it's leaning slightly towards the market responding in a positive way to bad news. Now, ETH has always been more positive because it still hasn't broken its 2022 low, which is unusual. So I think this is more likely to lead the way higher. So we'll get an idea out of everything that we're going to look at. I think ETH should be the macro leader to say whether strategically we should be getting more excited about buying than anything else, because it's one of the majors, as we know, but it's also not broken its 2022 low. It's not actually broken the low from a few weeks ago. Now, technically, if I was just to look at this immediately and not know anything about the market at all, I'd have to say, look, it's still in a range. It's a sideways range, and it's non-trending. So everyone can see it's non-trending from about the middle of last year. It's oscillated around a central point of around 1,360, equally above and below that line, pretty much. So it's gone nowhere. But I think longer term, this will build into a base. So this will be a massive basing pattern, and then we can start talking about much higher prices once this is over. But week to week, there's not much to talk about here other than it's still stuck in this range. But I'm liking the fact that the bears can't get it any lower, or haven't been able to. Sure, they might take control in a very thin market as we approach the new year, or between Christmas and New Year, or whatever. They could get some stops. They might go for a quick run at the stops below 1071. Can't rule that out here, because this price action isn't strong enough to say definitely we've hit a low. But as it stands today, we're in a good place. We're in a good watching place for, let's see if we can build on this strength. And it's, again, working against the bearish sentiment, which is a good sign.
Yeah, great points. I used to wonder why anybody would be a bear, right? Until I learned that shorting, you can make more money than longing as things fall. And I saw somebody make hundreds of thousands of dollars off a $10,000 trade that they put in as Bitcoin dropped back in March of 2020. And I was like, oh my gosh. I think all in all, between two shorts, he made $500,000. And I was like, that's crazy. And I still don't recommend trading on leverage, and I don't trade on leverage myself. The truth is that person showed those wins, but I think there's a whole lot of losses they don't show. In fact, I think that person loses more than they win. And so that's why I don't do it. But it's amazing how much money there is in pushing the market down.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, as far as a sort of technical analyst or a trader like myself is, how we approach the market, I'm agnostic as to whether the market is going up or down. So it might sound like I'm saying, oh, I think crypto should go up because this is a crypto channel, and of course because of Definity, but that's actually really not the case at all. It's because of what I explained. There has to be some good reasons for my view. And but when it comes to actual trading, there is opportunity as long as the market's moving. That's all I'm looking for. I want to see a trend. Now, are you going to short an altcoin? Probably not, because they're too small and there's not enough liquidity, and you could really get caught out. But trading the markets from both directions, or at least not just buying, is something that that is, for me, part and parcel of a rounded strategy. I mean, I say that, but it really does depend. So, for example, if you're a value investor, shorting isn't going to be part of your strategy. It's going to be finding good businesses and just sticking with them for the long term. So it really depends what works for you. But I've seen markets crash, and I've seen markets inverse crash, i.e. go up, as though they're crashing to the upside. if that makes sense. That doesn't really make sense. Like go parabolic is, people call it an inverse crash, which I've always found to be quite a strange phrase, a bit like negative equity. It's like saying negative money. You don't have negative money. I call it the debt. I say it's a debt margin. So if the value of your home goes below the value paid for it, it's called a debt margin, but they call it negative equity, which I've always found weird. But anyway, the point is the market, as a technician, the market goes in both directions. So I'm not trying to have a bias in either direction, because I realize money can be made in both directions. And that's what trend trading is all about. So, but it really depends on an individual strategy. It's like there's so many different ways of trading, so many different risk profiles. And that's why I always say people should do their own research and do it the way they want to do it, rather than copying necessarily one other person or whatever their strategy, because it's very hard to stick with a strategy that you don't believe in. But yeah, I mean, there will be tales of people who will make lots of money in a crash, and all I can say is that there will come a time when the markets will crash again in a very big way, and those are really good times to make money. And I'm looking forward to that. And I think at some point the same thing will happen to, if I'm right about this next upward phase in cryptocurrencies, and it goes up for a few years, then there will come a time when we will be looking for a major collapse. And yeah, we'll be gearing up for that move to take advantage of it. I didn't think we were in that phase yet. It didn't feel like we were at that right point, even though the market has fallen a long way. I think there is still one more major rally to come in this before we see the top, as it were. But yeah, definitely you can make money in that environment.
Agreed. Well, let's jump into some of the altcoin suggestions from the viewers. If you have a suggestion for next week's video, go ahead and put it in the comments below, up to 2 per person. If you take the time to write out what you like about it and the fundamentals behind it, then we'll always give those ones priority over everything else. So let's take a look over, starting with Render Protocol.
Yes. So, right. So let's see. Yeah, Render Protocol. Let me just have a look at that. That is definitely the up-to-date price. So a couple of them I looked on TradingView. So I just want to pop that over as well.
So you got the Render token right there.
Yeah. Okay, great. So so Render token, I think we looked at it probably a couple of weeks ago, and the overall bias here is it's still kind of going sideways, and it's in a downward trend from here, and it's in an upward trend from here. So downward trend basically from November 21 in the context of an upward trend from June last year. So that kind of negates itself. They kind of balance each other out, and the market is sitting between the two, and we're waiting for the next big swing. Now, it's just gone below its trend line, but because there's a lot of support around here, it's not really done very much. So it's not like broken it and then suddenly collapsed. But I think given that it's broken this trend line, I feel that there will be a bit more downward pressure. And I wouldn't rule out it having a go at 36 cents and maybe coming back to this support here, which is massive, around 30 cents. So it's just because it's broken that and the broader macro themes are still a little bit negative that I think the market might try and take this lower. But bigger picture, as long as this support holds in around 30 to 31, which is a major level, I don't want to see that go. As long as those levels hold in, I think this should turn up with everything else. So short-term consolidation, if I had to make a call on it, I'd have to wait. I like the fact that it does have a long-term trend to operate within, but it's just that it's sneaked below this trend line that we drew from last time that I think we just got to be a little bit cautious at this point in time.
Yeah, great call. If you were to look at it as a buy, wait, or sell, what would you do at this point?
I'd definitely wait here. I'd be waiting. I mean, for me to buy it, I'd want to see it go over 55 cents. That would be my first.
You would want to break this upper
Yeah, I want to see this resistance go, because it's tried
Yeah.
a few times to break it and it's failed. So,
Yep.
and also that was where this trend line was as well. So I'd like to see it get above that as the first trigger.
Yeah, makes sense. Let me pull up a little bit of fundamentals on it. Percent. So Render hit some really big gains. It was as cheap as 9 cents way back here. It's now at 41 cents, which is still 4x over it was where it was in late 2020, early 2021. It did go all the way to almost $8 right here. And so it's pulled back tremendously. Half of its tokens approximately are in circulation. And that's still, in this market, that's a pretty decent market cap. So I like the idea of Render Token. Render Token is a decentralized way for people to put their powerful PCs to work, earning them some money, processing things for other people. So whether it's processing video gaming for somebody who maybe has a lower end machine and just rents the processing power to be able to play the higher resolution games, or whether it's rendering like multi-polygon type things for even like movie studios that don't want to buy a powerful computer or lease a powerful computer to use to render their 3D animations. Stuff like Avatar and everything, that takes massive processing power to render once all the placements and the movements are done. And so that's what Render Protocol is all about. So I like where it's trading. We'll see where it goes from here. For me, it's just a wait. Their market cap is higher than most everything that I've been buying is. There's a tremendous discount or tremendous sale on a lot of things with market caps. Some of them below $1 million, some far below $1 million, and some around 4 million. So that's where I've been sprinkling little additional funds into during this market. Let's take a look at Solana, which has been on a lot of people's minds because just with FTX and Alameda Capital or Alameda Research being so tied to Solana, Solana has not done well.
Yeah, it's probably not surprising that I'm going to say that we need to be very, very cautious here. You know, to its advantage, it's not made a new low in the past couple of weeks, which is great. But anything that is this close to its prior low, I can't. There's no technical pattern for me to buy it, so I'd have to wait. Now, I am interested in this resistance here. If you notice, this 1510, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 times it's tried to break above that and failed. So for me, that is where I would buy it if it broke it, because it would show that the market it's got through some key resistance, plus it's showing some strength. Trying to catch it as it's falling is a bit risky, I think, at this point. So I would be waiting for now, but that would be my trigger point. If it can get through 1510, and it would be just be a short-term trade. It'd be like an exploratory trade into it. It wouldn't be like, okay, this is definitely going up and for a long time. It'd just be, this could be a short-term sort of 1 week, 2 week move, and then we'd have to reassess it. As you can see, the moving averages are still moving lower, and there's plenty of resistance for it to get through. There's a lot of wood to chop, as they say in the market. So we'd have to go very, very cautiously here. Now, I'd get more bullish on this if we're seeing the majors turning up and some good trends there. And then I'd be thinking, wow, where could we look around for something that will play catch up? And this would be very high on the list, especially if it's shown us something good. But for the moment, it'd have to be a wait. But it's a good one to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, for me, it's a wait too. Just I think Solana will probably survive. Alameda Research was a big part of like pushing things towards Solana, and FTX was as well. And boy, that was a house of cards. Yeah, I was a little bit cautious with Sam Bankman-Fried because I didn't understand his background and how he went to so much money so fast. But I did not have any idea the level of malevolence that some projects that work with them as the capital provider for liquidity and providing liquidity that they described that happened to them in partnering with Alameda Research and to provide capital, and how that they would essentially get that liquidity used against them to destroy them. And then they were offered a small amount of buy-off fee if they would sign a non-disclosure and not then talk about it to anyone. So he ended up being a much worse actor than I could have even fathomed. And some of that stuff's coming out, a lot of the stuff on FTX, and, you know, of course, there's a lot of misdirection on it. And, oh, oops, I made a mistake. It's a really big deal when you use your user funds that they've deposited into the exchange to trade against, to loan to your risky asset side. So, but that's not the only thing he was doing that was shady. That's just one piece of it. So we'll see if Solana survives that. I think it will. There's lots of other great projects developing on it, but it's definitely going to hurt them. And I think it's going to hurt them some more. Let's jump over to Freeway token and see how that's doing.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, Freeway token. Now that is one that I think you have to again be very careful of. I think we looked at it around this point here last time. So in October, after this move down, I think we were cautious about whether it would make another low or attempt to make another low, which it has. Now, one of the sort of head scratches here is it did break into a new low, but it has actually had a pretty decent rally. So is this the start of a new trend? Well, you know, it could be. This is what you'd expect when you see the beginning of a new trend. Very sharp price action, very hard to get into because you're waiting for a pullback that doesn't come. And it's telling you it's the beginning of something. So we've had like a couple of phases of this. Still have to be very cautious because of all this overhanging stock above. Because obviously if this was a move into a new high or from a solid base, it would look very different to the way it looks now, because of course the market was range bound for so long. So it's recovering back into the range rather than moving into a new high, which is a very big distinction. But having said that, I think the way it's moved up here and is now correcting, we would allow for a correction to come in to about 0.0018, possibly a bit lower to 1.6. So this little consolidation point here, if it comes back, retraces about 50% of this move, that's fine. If it goes beyond that, then we start to worry it's going to make new lows again. I'd say overall, this is still highly risky, but I wouldn't necessarily buy it at this point. If I was going to try and get in, I'd wait for a pullback and then like a bigger consolidation, and then put in a small amount of capital and then just forget about it. It'd literally be sort of red or black for me on this one. But I am, given the overall structure and all the cautiousness that's got to go with it, I am actually quite impressed with the way it's rallied in the short term. So this is very smooth, but it's also happened at a time when the whole industry's been under a cloud. So that's doubly impressive. So that's why I think it's starting a correction, a bigger correction here. And that's why I think we'll get it cheaper. But if we do, it's worth allocating a little bit of money to it, just because it's showing this strength, and it could be interesting as we move into January.
Yeah, they had a catastrophic failure that caused them to freeze withdrawals from their platform, essentially. And so they've done a bunch of, they offered people that had up to a certain amount of money on their platform a private call with the CEO, who then would, show them some things. I'm in line to have that private call. I haven't had it yet. You have to sign a non-disclosure. I know some people that have had that call, and they said they felt way, way better about everything after. And so I think we see that reflected in the price going back up, right? Is that people that have had the call and other things, that their faith is increased, that everything's fine. So,
I wonder why they just wouldn't be transparent about it and just say, this is what's gone on and this is what's happening. But obviously
They've shared
there's got to
some
be
of
something
that.
jumping.
I think some of what they're sharing in the future they can't share yet, though I don't know. I have signed the non-disclosure, but nothing's been disclosed to me, so there's nothing I can't say yet.
I understand.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I don't know exactly.
But that is encouraging.
That conversation. Yeah. So you're seeing some of that reflected in the price, and hopefully they come back out. I have a lot of money invested in their token and some on their platform as well. Let's take a look next at Wanchain. Fantastic.
Yeah. So Wanchain is great build-up of resistance at the moment at 25 cents. So I am very keen to see it break that at some point. Now, do I think it's going to break it right now? No. It's too volatile in the very short term. So what you see here is the market shot up. It's come all the way back down again. And there's been quite high volume as well. So there's been some interesting things happening. But the net effect of that from kind of May to now is that it's still within this range, which is it's holding a range, which is good. It's not a bearish trend, but we want to see the start of a bullish trend in order to start allocating more capital to it, rather than just hoping. Well, for me, in the way I look at it, I want to see some concrete lows so I can build on those lows. And that would happen for me through 25 cents. It's a fantastic resistance points. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times it's attempted to break that, and it hasn't. The way I see that is the more times the market tries to break something, when it eventually does, it increases the value of that hugely. So I'm not ruling out like jumping onto it as it gets drawn towards that level. So if it starts to get pulled higher, then it becomes more attractive. Because it's a bit like it's taking some momentum to break through that level. So I'm not saying that we wouldn't buy it before that level, but if I don't look at it for a while, I would say this has to happen before I would sort of initiate a trade. So for me, it's sort of neutral at this point. But I really do like that build up of resistance.
Yeah, I like Wanchain. And, I think they're at amazing deal levels. What they're doing in the background is building their technology and their trustless cross-chain bridges across many of the different chains. And if it feels like their ecosystem is coming together, what it doesn't have is tons of funds on it. But it could reach a point that they've connected up so many ecosystems that once you onboard money into the system, it's easy to transfer it around to any of the different chains and then buy, as well as NFTs. They have a way to send NFTs between the different chains, which without just doing a wrapped version of like wrapping an NFT within, then it gets wrapped into something else in this. So they have a really cool technology with what they're doing to set this all up. And I think it's good enough that it will get some massive funds coming in sometimes, because within the ecosystem, you would easily be able to move them across to all these different chains. And this may just be like Matic. Matic did poorly for forever until all of a sudden it hit enough critical mass and attention that money started flowing into it. And then Matic did amazing. Matic went from 1 cent up to $2 or $3. So,
yeah.
Let's take a look over. Well, let me share. So I do have it on CoinMarketCap here, and a little bit of look at its current market cap is 30 million. Its fully diluted market cap is 32 million. So most of the tokens are in circulation. So we've seen a lot of the vesting already happen, which is a good thing. We're looking at the charts here, and if you look at the log scale, it hit back in mid 2018, almost $9. But if you think back then, only a small percentage of the tokens were probably in circulation. And over time, a lot of those tokens come back into circulation, with it peaking again at much lower than previous. It hit about $2.40, but now about 100% of the tokens are in circulation. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a much bigger W pattern here, with it bottoming out not quite as low as it did here, but it hit pretty close. But now most of the tokens are in circulation, and so there's no more tokens that can be dumped on investors' heads and sold and push the price down, other than most of what's been bought during this time period, or investors who may be bought in the pre-sale but are still holding them and haven't sold. And I think the pre-sale or the ICO price was like 40 cents. So I like his situation where people can't sell without selling at a loss, because there's just going to be a lot fewer sellers than if perhaps somebody bought it forever ago when they bought it for half a penny, and they can still sell at, say, 15 cents and be in a massive profit. Well, that's just not the case. Great. I forgot to look at Freeway token's market cap. I have it pulled up here. So another thing about Freeway token now is that its max supply and total supply and circulating supply are all the same now. So it seems like all the tokens are in circulation, at least according to Coin Market Cap, and that gives it a $24 million market cap. All right. Let's take a look at Algorand. I haven't looked at Algorand in a while. This will be fun.
Yeah, Algorand. Unfortunately, Algorand is still in a little bit of a downward trend here. And I say a little bit, it's in a lot of a downward trend. It's not finding any support, which is worrying me. This was the consolidation area here where it should really have found some form of support. But it attempted to break out at this point. That is a buy signal. That would have been a buy signal on a breakout, but that failed. Fair enough. Comes back into the range. Should have range traded. The fact that it took the low of the range out is not good, and it's very smooth. So I'm a bit concerned here. I would say, well, if I was looking at it right now, would I sell right now? Probably not, because we're approaching this prior support that's around 17 cents. And so we could get a reaction from there, but I wouldn't be buying it to enter a new long position, if that makes sense. Just because there isn't enough for me, I'd try and find something that's showing a bit more strength. Between 17 cents and this low down here at 11 cents, this is where it needs to stop. I mean, obviously, we don't want to see it go much lower than that, but this is performing badly against the majors that aren't really doing very much. So the fact that it's weaker than everything else is a bit of a problem. So for me to get sort of more comfortable and less concerned about this, I'd at the very least want to see it back in this range, which is over the 28 cents level. That would be the first kind of thing that would tell me that it's recovering, but it really needs to break this downward trend line for a longer term recovery. So yeah, I'd be looking behind the scenes to see what's going on here, why it's so weak against everything else. I mean, sure, there could be some great value coming up, but I want to see people like you guys buying it because you've seen something and very sharp, positive candles to reverse this negative trend that it's pulling it down so fast.
Algorand's an interesting one. So the founder was from MIT and actually a big person in the computer science realm. But a lot of their funding, their initial funding, came from bigger VC funds and everything. And so they absolutely got crushed when this launched and the price just dumped. Now, think about it launching. This is right in the bear market, right? We're talking mid-June 2019. So it went from 320 all the way down, bottoming out at like 15 cents. And so I think most of the initial investors were upside down and underwater. So the first time they weren't upside down and underwater was somewhere, I don't know exactly what their buy price was in here, and they took some profits. I haven't seen enough adoption happening with Algorand. It's not a new project. It's been around for a while. I don't know if the adoption's happening that can make this long term. I don't know either what's causing the price to drop so much here. I haven't yet held Algorand at any point, and I haven't bought it. It's starting to get to a price that if fundamentally I could see what would make this survive into the next bull market, that I might start getting really interested. Because, yeah, as we're seeing, like, that price is just like continuing to fall off a cliff. So for me, it would, yeah, if I held some, I might even consider selling it, hoping I could buy some more new. Otherwise, I would just hold on to it. I have some things that are going down, and I mostly just hold on to them because I don't know where that bottom's going to be. And, December, a lot of things are crashing hard because of all the FUD. And I never like to sell when that kind of FUD is going on, because sometimes the whole market then picks up after that sentiment is so down. January historically is not that friendly to crypto, though, or at least back when China was involved, because a lot of the people in China would sell coming up to the Chinese New Year in early January. China kind of got banned from crypto, according to the Chinese Communist Party. So I don't know how impactful that will be this January. So we'll have to see how that works. Maybe our lows come in December, or maybe there's more to come in January. I don't know how that will play out, but I don't like to sell into this savage of a sell. A lot of things I'll just hold. So I would be tempted to sell on this, thinking that it's going to probably go down and get even cheaper. Let's take a look at our next one, which would be Vechain.
Yes. So Vechain, I will get on the TradingView app because I couldn't find it on the other chart. So I thought, let's just use this. So very similar. So, I can be quite brief with this, I think. It's very, very similar in terms of the trend is negative, and it's correcting into a different area of support. Whereas, with Algorand, I'm not saying they're in the same market, by the way, but Algorand, it's much lower, it's much further down here. At least with this is closer to sort of prior resistance or support that came from the prior rallies. So this area that it's falling into is showing much more potential support promise, because it's retracing. So if we take this as the main trend, so this is the main upward trend, and this is a retracement, we still see this as part of the developing larger bull market, and therefore it looks like there's more for this to turn around, break a downward trend line and move higher, as opposed to trading down here near to sort of historic lows that would suggest massive caution as to whether the project's going to survive. Now, it doesn't guarantee anything, but it is at a very interesting point here. So what I would say, given the overall big picture for what we're seeing here now, would I buy it right now? No, because I want to see this support be reaffirmed by actual buying, by the price action turning around. And at the moment, this trend is way too smooth for me to step in and just say, just because I'm buying here, it's going to stop. I need something a bit more than that. So recovery over sort of 2 cents would be the first part of that. If it gets over, nearly 3 cents, that, or through this, which is the 200-day moving average, if it gets or can close over that and turn these averages up, that looks far better for me. That would present a much better proposition, because it would tell me that the market has hit a low. It's hit a low in a very good support area and is now trending up. We could draw in an upward trend line from this low here to wherever it stops here. So this is what I'm looking to do from a bigger picture point of view. I want to see the market base out and then somewhere around here, so then I can draw a trend line from here, and that allows me to then say, well, as long as it's above that trend line, I will try and stay in the market. Now, I can't draw this trend line here because this trend is not confirmed. This support is not confirmed as yet. So it needs to V off that into a decent bounce for me to allocate that as a trend line. And I don't know where that's going to be. So I'd have to say wait, but it's a really interesting project to follow, especially because it's coming into what I would say is a very important resistance and support zone.
Yeah. Vechain is interesting. Like, we're seeing a lot of these similar patterns in the market, right? So here was the previous bear market, and here is early 2021. So February, March, April, May. So massive peak. And then later, the second bump in the year. Now, a few things went higher than their March peak, but just a few. A lot of them kind of had this little bit of uptick and then basically coming down into a new crypto winter. So will VeChain survive? I would say probably. Will they be the newest, biggest thing? I don't know. I had VeChain during the last bear market, and I sold it pretty what turned out to be pretty early, unfortunately, because it went all the way over 20 cents. And I didn't rebuy it, even though I would get in the comments, you need to hold it, right? When things hit this massive momentum and everyone's talking about them, is not when I'm usually buying it, right? I try to buy it when nobody's talking about it. But I still feel like their technology has great potential. So we do have a lot of third generation blockchains now, all competing for this space, and VeChain hasn't kept as much pace as I would have liked to see, at least from what I'm aware of. And so I think Cardano is dominating this space. I think Binance Smart Chain, Polygon is an absolute behemoth. New entrants into that, Immutable X. Also Phantom and Avalanche and some other ones have come in and taken market share from VeChain. So will it survive? Probably, at least into the next bear or bull market, but beyond that. So I'm only looking to buy this if it's an absolute steal of a deal. And at this current market cap, you can see most of the tokens are in circulation. I like that, but it's still over $1 billion market cap. And so for me, only if it gets a lot cheaper than this, for me, I wouldn't buy any. In fact, if I held it, I would probably be selling it. Just personal choice to be rolling it into something that had a lower market cap. I don't have anything against VeChain. It's just a higher market cap than most of what I have. The only thing I have that has a higher market cap than VeChain, other than a tiny fraction of Bitcoin and a tiny fraction of ETH, is Cardano. Cardano's at a higher market cap than this. But I don't hold all that much Cardano compared to what I used to, because I've rolled a lot of that into lower market cap projects, higher risk, higher potential return. All right, let's take a look at the next one.
Is it Solend?
Yeah, Solend. We haven't looked at Solend in quite a while.
Yeah. So yeah, this is interesting from a short-term technical point of view. I know, as you say, we haven't looked at it for a while. It has been in this big downward trend, but when I'm looking for something to sort of base a buy decision on, I'm looking for some form of reversal pattern, which is what was lacking in the previous couple of charts. But this is something that looks like it's making a reversal pattern. So if you look at the market, it's made a low, it's made a high, it's made another low, and it's coming back up to what I would call a trigger point at 42 cents. So the fact that it's rallied when everything's quite bearish, it's great. The fact that it's making a reversal pattern when everything's quite bearish is even better. So I want to see a reversal pattern complete during bearish sentiment. Now, the size of the pattern that's formed from November to where we are now, it's only a month. So it doesn't guarantee that the market will rally. Well, there's no guarantees anyway, but in terms of technical analysis, it doesn't say that the market will have a massive rally and it will keep trending. But what it does say is it could have quite a nice little squeeze. So risk against reward, if it breaks through 42 cents, I think we could see this go up to sort of 50 to maybe even 60 as a potential target. Now, if it gets to those levels, we'll have to start asking other questions, because the overall trend is still down. And this could be forming some other reversal pattern, a bigger pattern that we could then anchor as a major low, and then start talking about, some decent single-digit dollar numbers thereafter. But it's way too early to be talking about that now. We're at the first step of a potential rally. But having said that, when we're looking for strength, it's showing strength. We're looking for a reverse pattern. It's got that. So I'd say through 42, I would say that's a buy for me. And I would give it a bit of room in case it breaks it and comes back down again, because these projects are very much likely to be more volatile. And I would say I would give like a 2-day close below 33 cents as an exit point. So yeah, this is a good one. So thank you for suggesting it, because I think it's at an interesting point.
Yeah, we're seeing the bottom kind of rounding here, which is what I like to see. Solend surprised me with the way it all played out. Solend, yeah, so this was one of the victims of the little Alameda Research thing that they would do. And so Solend had partnered with Alameda Research for initial capital, as well as to so one of their investors was Alameda Research. And the token lockups for all their pre-sale investors were quite lengthy. And so their tokens started dumping shortly after launch. And I couldn't understand who was selling into that, because only people using the Solend platform were supposed to have tokens that were available to send. And this is one of the little things that Alameda Research was doing to try to gain capital to make up for their losses, is the liquidity tokens that they were given. In order to provide liquidity, they would then dump the price down. And the way that they would set it up, they'd dump the price down and be able to essentially buy those tokens back for that lowest price, was what I got from how a project explained what had been done to them. They never did agree to the offer from Alameda Research, and so they weren't under a non-disclosure agreement. So they could say exactly what Alameda Research did to them, which makes sense why Solend kept dumping, because I was thinking, who has tokens that could keep dumping into this and bringing this price all the way down? Because I bought Solend. I bought Solend at like $7, and then it went to $10 and $14, and from there just got dumped to hell. And I was like, who could even afford to be selling in the tokenomics? There's nobody that should be able to sell down to this price. Well, that was one of the things that Alameda Research was doing and ruining new companies. So did they ruin this one? I don't know. There's a lot of other good investors on that cap table, but they definitely savaged this project. And if it can survive, it should do well. It's an if it can survive, though. And so we're seeing a rounding of this and starting to look attractive. I still hold my tokens, and I've just kind of written them off that, yeah, maybe they'll be worth a lot. If I see good things and I see this bottom round a little bit more, then I would probably buy more. For me, it's still just a wait. And yeah, that would bring down my dollar cost average price by a lot, picking up some at this price. But I just want to see a little bit more that they're surviving before I pick up more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, let's take a look with the time frame we have. Why don't we look at two more? Let's look at Spores and then Aioz.
Okay. So Spores, here we have. Unfortunately, this looks like we've currently got quite a big negative candle or bar just as we speak, printing, and unfortunately, the overall trend kind of confirms that direction. As you can see, that the trend is very much to the downside, without any form of double bottom or potential rounding or some slowing of that trend, which is, if I just quickly flip back to the previous chart, you can see why in technical analysis we look for a little bit of strength before we step in, because if you try to step in when it's doing this, it's not clear that the selling pressure is over. So even though you might say, well, why would you wait to pay more money for something, which I'm sure people will be thinking, why does he want to buy it when it's higher, when you could just buy it now? Well, it's for this reason. It's the direction of travel of the market, where we don't really know how low it's going to go. So Spores is a very good technical example of that. And perhaps if it's for the wrong reasons, it's a really good one to look at, because it's showing how these trends continue. From a technical point of view, we want to see some form of capitulation to say, look, that's it. That comes in various forms, but one is that the market has a really sharp move down and then a sharp move back up again to reverse it, which shows that people have just like thrown in the towel, but then other people, smart people who've checked out the value of the company and gone, this is such a great deal, they swoop in at those low levels. I want to see something like that happen to indicate that it's hit its low. When it moves down really smoothly, that's more of a concern, because it means that's not happening. You're not getting that final shakeout and capitulation. So for me, it's a sell here. And I always like to put in a level where I think I would change my mind, because obviously I might not look at this for a long time. So I would say it needs to get over this 0.0002 level at the very least, or I would put in a downward trend line and say, look, if it breaks that, then we can start talking about maybe putting some longs in. But for the moment, it seems to be on quite a clear downward trend.
Yeah, makes sense. It has hit even lower lows, and it's basically half the price of what it was even back in October. I have lots of this. I did buy some more back in October, and so it's gone down even cheaper. So not a bad dollar cost average price if you believe this project's going to survive. I think it probably will. Again, I've talked about this before. I like the founders behind it. I think they're well connected. I think the price has gotten ridiculously cheap. There's always the possibility that the founders just call it quits. And if so, then it won't really rebound from this. If it pulls out and survives till money comes back in the market, usually the rebounds can be quite severe and nice. Let's take a look at Aioz, which is another one we haven't looked at in quite a while that's also gotten savaged in price.
Yeah, and so this is in a similar position where, as you can see, we're right close to the prior support lows. And for me, it's kind of a sell here, because it's part of this downward trend. These spikes have been sold into, and the overall sort of patterns, the signature that this market has got is for lower highs with these spikes. So we've seen that before, and it's tailed off. The spike here, and it's tailed off. And the broader trend is still downwards. So, I think that if a lot of these projects, especially ones like this, if they can survive like about a month or so, when everything else potentially will be, there will be a conclusion to this sort of this crypto winter. We should be starting a new bull phase. If they can survive just like a bit longer, then great. We may be looking at some major bargains. But at the moment, for me, because the trend is still very clear to the downside, I'd have to say this is a sell. And at the very least, it's a wait. But given that it looks like it's about to break this prior low, now, if the price action does something like breaks the low and then comes straight back up within a couple of days, that would show that anyone who shorted it or bailed out, it's showing strength on that, which is, I'm thinking, like 2 chess moves ahead, if you see what I mean. So if it does that, then that would look interesting, because it would say that we've tried to break into a new low, that's been rejected, and the market's moving back up again, especially if everything else is. But as it stands from what we can see here, I think it's just a case of a very smooth downward trend, and we've yet to see the capitulation. So I'd have to wait for sure.
Yeah, I want to share this, right? So here's the market cap is down to 22 million. It was the fully diluted market cap is 33 million. So one of the things that's happened is a lot more of their tokens have been coming into circulation recently, and that's put a lot more price pressure, bringing the price down. Interestingly enough, so Aioz had never gone all the way back down to its private sale prices. So if you see here, the IDO price was 1.5 cents. Even the private sale was 1.5 cents. And so it's not even quite there. It's still double the private sale or an ICO price. And it's probably on its way there. And maybe even will go below it, as a lot of these tokens have been put into circulation. I don't know what the vesting schedule looks like on this, but it's vesting pretty heavily. So a lot of these tokens have been going into circulation. And that's probably what's pushing more of this price down. Great. Well, the bottoms feel like this, and they feel rough, and they feel terrible, feel horrible, and it's just part of it. And so a lot of people, you know, they call it quits and they run and they sell everything and they're done, and they don't want to think about crypto until months or a year or two later. Their friends are telling them how much they made on crypto, and then they're like, wait, what? And then they kind of plug back in, and they missed a lot of the fun because they got washed out during the not so fun time period. Now, it really depends on how you look at it, because if you love amazing deals, well, then it's the funnest time ever. What makes it not so fun is when you made placements and you see that you could have bought it even cheaper. And there's a whole lot of that right now. So that washes a lot of people out. Will it be you? I hope not, because this is a good time to be here. Paul, thank you so much for joining our audience and sharing your insights with some great price analysis.
Always a pleasure. Some really brilliant picks this week. And, you know, thank you so much. And I'll see you next week.
All right. Sounds good. So, yes, the market's way down right now and it's slow. But good decisions made during these pullbacks lead to life-changing ones when the market does turn around. And it will turn around. Thanks so much for joining us. This wrap is for all of you.
To the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit, right before you could, was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. Buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out, cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, to leave in a lot. Why when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, but time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. Naysayers come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, say the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.